Could we see a significant trade between the Montreal Canadiens and the Calgary Flames? The latest rumors indicate there's a few players in each team that might be a good fit for each club. Plus, we have big news out of Boston with Rask retiring. We have an NHL waiver claim and some more news regarding Montreal continuing to reshape their coaching staff and front office. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot to talk about here today. It's been an extremely busy news day in the NHL. We've already have 2 videos up on the channel today. The first one talking about the Dominic Ducharme firing in Montreal. And of course, his the announcement for his replacement didn't come to a few hours later. So of course, we have another video talking about the hiring of new head coach Marchand St. Louis. So certainly check those out if you haven't already. And we have a lot more to talk about here. We might as well kick things off sticking with Montreal. There's more news tonight regarding another hiring that the Habs are expected to make and likely could announce as early as tomorrow. It looks like one of St. Louis' longtime Tampa Bay teammates, Quebec native and one of the great former first overall picks, Vincent Lecavalier, is expected to be named assistant general manager to Kent Hughes tomorrow. So, or at least this week, it could come as early as tomorrow, was the news that was earlier on Twitter here from some NHL reporters. So certainly the Habs continue to kind of reshape their front office and coaching staff. As I mentioned earlier, like Marchand St. Louis, a very interesting coaching hire. Terrific career, regarded as an extremely bright, hardworking guy with lots of knowledge on hockey. So I'd certainly expect there to be some interesting times. Like, we just don't know what kind of coach he's going to be because he doesn't have any experience. It doesn't mean it's going to be a bad hire. Just we don't really know what to expect. When you have coaches with prior track records, you have a good idea how they like to do things, what kind of systems they like to run, that kind of stuff, and you kind of have a better feel for the fit. But in this case, like I said, we know that between St. Louis and of course, Lecavalier coming in, a couple of things that tick some boxes. For one, they had terrific NHL careers, very smart hockey players, well regarded as, bright minds in the future of the game to possibly have these type of roles in the future. They speak French, so they're, certainly good for the community and the media and the fans and everything of the Montreal Canadiens. So there's a lot of, things to think, okay, this could work out. And you can look at the fact that their previous coach, Dominic Ducharme, even though he was new to the NHL, been a coach for a really long time, a lot of success in Major Junior. That didn't work out. Not to say that it was all his fault, but look at how many other experienced coaches get fired all the time. So just the fact that he doesn't have experience isn't necessarily a bad thing. It just means that we have some questions and we don't really know what to expect. But certainly the fact here that Jeff Gorton obviously has a lot of experience himself, but everybody he's bringing in underneath him when it comes to Hughes and Lecavalier, St. Louis, like they're all, been in the game a long time, but they're all brand new to the roles with no experience. So it's just very interesting to see how this could work out, and we'll see what happens. But expect a Vincent Lecavalier announcement to come possibly as early as tomorrow. Now, we also have news from the NHL waiver wire. The Seattle Kraken have claimed defenseman Dennis Cholowski, who was placed on waivers yesterday by the Washington Capitals. Of course, Seattle was his former team at the start of the season, so he goes back to the Kraken where he started the year. That's 2 waiver claims for Seattle in 2 days after taking Austin Czarnik from the Islanders just the day before. Now, we have a couple of suspensions that are coming. We just don't know the exact details or what they're going to work out to be, but there was a couple of nasty situations in the NHL last night. We saw Bruins forward Brad Marchand kind of lose his cool, kind of snap. I'm not really sure exactly what set him off. I only saw bits and pieces of the game, saw the highlights, but I was watching another game when this all happened, so I only seen it after the fact. But he was given a match penalty at the end of the game. Really, deliberately punched goalie Tristan Jarry in the head after the play. Got a stick up in his face, so clearly, I believe the referee was Wes McCauley, and who he gave Marchand a match penalty. So it's an automatic review. He's automatically suspended pending further review and investigation by the league and the NHL player to the safety department. They've offered him an in-person hearing, which means they have the option of suspending for 5 or more games. Now, if another player does that, it probably isn't as severe, but Marchand has a long rap sheet, including a suspension earlier this season. I'm not really sure he's done anything exactly like this before, per se. At one point he was suspended for a lot of slew foots. We've seen some, hits that were classified as illegal or dirty hits before. So I don't know exactly what they're going to do with this. Like, they don't have to suspend 5 or more, but generally speaking, when you see the in-person hearing offered, it generally always happens and it's 5 or more. I'm not sure of a situation, at least that one that comes to mind, of a situation where they were offered that and actually given 2 or 3 or 4 games or something less. So we'll see what happens, but with Marchand's long rap sheet, it's likely going to be a severe punishment for that situation. And of course, in that same game, they also lost Patrice Bergeron, who had a crash into the boards and is going to be out for a period of time. Looks like it could be a head injury, so that's certainly not good. So they're going to be without 2 of their top players and long-time veteran guys here for a critical part of the schedule coming up. Bergeron could be out. We don't really know what that's going to be like, right? I mean, it could be a few games. It could be longer. We don't know. And if Marchand gets, 5, 6, 7 games or something like that for what happened, that's going to be a big blow to them. And they don't have a ton of breathing room when it comes to the playoffs. They do have some, obviously. But if one of the teams like Detroit or even a team like Ottawa, who's got a ton of games in hand, goes on a tear, it's going to take a lot. They're not, like I said, they're not anywhere near serious trouble. But if one of those, like Ottawa, Detroit, or Islanders, or somebody goes on a crazy tear, that's what it's going to take for them to be in trouble. But it's just not good either way. It doesn't matter what happens if they're losing and they're not able to keep up. That's bad. But, it doesn't mean that's going to happen. They do have some decent depth. It's just going to make things more challenging for them without 2 of their top guys out of the lineup. The game last night between the Jets and the Wild also had a lot of fisticuffs and rough stuff taking place, multiple fights. And forward Marcus Foligno of the Wild is also facing a hearing. This hearing won't take place until tomorrow, so we should know by tomorrow afternoon or evening what the outcome of that is. He's likely going to get a couple of games here. But during his fight with Jets forward Adam Lowry, once they wrestled to the ground, he intentionally was kneeing him to the head. So that's certainly not good. I know Foligno lost his cool. He was upset about a hit earlier in the game. Things were certainly getting pretty tense between the two rivals, and things kind of get out of hand. That's very out of character for Foligno. Obviously a guy who's not afraid of the rough stuff, known for lots of hits and fights. It's not a part of his game, but he usually doesn't cross the line. He usually stays within the boundaries here to not get himself in trouble. So we'll see. I don't suspect a big number on that one. Probably, I'd say maybe 2 games, maybe 3 at most. But I'm thinking probably 2 is what I'm going to predict. But we'll see. But both guys are likely facing a suspension here announced in the near future. The St. Louis Blues have been signing a bunch of players lately, and today they signed their head coach Craig Berube to a 3-year contract extension. This has been an extension that's been rumored for a while. It was well known that Berube was in the final year of his contract, needing a new deal to keep going. Earlier in the year, there was some debate whether or not, that they were going to, make this move, or if they're going to wait and make a decision in the offseason, maybe part ways if things didn't go well. But the Blues have certainly had a pretty solid year, looking like they're treading towards the playoffs again. And I don't know if we can call them cup contenders, but certainly the year they won was a little bit of a unique season. I don't think we really saw them as, big cup contenders going into the playoffs, but they were on such a high going in that you had to think it was possible, but they certainly had to overcome the odds that year for sure. But now, of course, the Blues are certainly pretty stable, and Berube's done a great job during his tenure there, of course, and I think the extension's well-deserved. I don't think there's really any reason to think that they need a change behind the bench here at this time. So he gets extended for 3 more seasons in St. Louis. And we get big news out of Boston today that Tuukka Rask is ending his comeback and is announcing his retirement, which is now officially official. Tuukka Rask has made a statement via the Boston Bruins and their social media. They put out a video tribute to his career, which included a little bit of audio from Rask himself. And he goes down as one of the greatest Bruins goalies of all time. I mean, he technically does have a Stanley Cup to his name. A lot of people don't really always remember that, given the fact that Tim Thomas was the starting goalie and got the bulk of the playing time. But Rask was on that team and was a part of that 2011 Cup run. And then, of course, after Thomas departed, he took on the starting role and ran with it for a really long time. He gets 308 wins over 564 games played. That might not sound like a lot, but for a goaltender who doesn't play every night, that's actually a pretty high number for games played, and 308 wins is nothing to be ashamed of. That's a pretty solid number, given a long history of the original six team, the Boston Bruins, to have the most wins and most games played in franchise history is something to be extremely proud of. He also has a Vezina trophy to his name from 2014. Was always in the mix numerous times between All-Star games, Vezina trophy voting. Had some solid playoff runs, certainly after being traded and drafted by the Maple Leafs before he ever played. I know they had some legendary matchups between the Leafs and Bruins in the playoffs, and was certainly a Leaf killer there for a while. So I'm sure the Maple Leafs won't be upset that he's not going to be around anymore, but certainly the hip surgeries on goalies are, huge for recovery and really hard to overcome. When that starts to go on a goalie's body, it's really challenging to play near the level that you want and expect to. And of course, we know when the first game he came back, he actually had a pretty solid game, but then things really spiraled downhill after that, and it was apparent that he just couldn't move the way he used to and the way he needs to provide a high enough level of goaltending that the team and his teammates and himself and the fans and everybody expects, and he just doesn't want to go down that way. So essentially, Rask is kind of ending this on his own call here, saying that, I can't provide the level of goaltending that I want and feel you deserve and the team deserves. So certainly good on him. I think the next question is Tuukka Rask a Hall of Famer? I want to know what you think down below in the comments. Let me know what you think on that front. I think it's certainly debatable for sure. I don't know that it's a slam dunk that he's 100% in, but I think he's definitely in the conversation. I think the odds are pretty good. He technically, like I said, he has a Stanley Cup to his name. He has a Vezina trophy. You could argue over a decade tenure that he was in the top of his field consistently year after year in the conversation. In the upper level of the top 5 to 10 goalies every season. So based on the individual accomplishments, the team accomplishments, the fact that he's a Bruins all-time leader in wins and games played, I think that there's a good chance he is a Hall of Famer. I don't know if it'll be first ballot or not, but he certainly has had a tremendous career. And not only that, but if you look at his international body work representing his country of Finland as well, certainly you throw that in the mix, he's very, very, very impressive. I don't think he wanted to retire this early ideally, but that's the cards he's been dealt, and it looks like he's dealing with it well, at least going out on his own terms, which is certainly what you like to see for professional athletes in that situation. So best of luck to Tuukka Rask in retirement. Be interesting to see if he remains involved with the team in some other capacity. Will he ever get into coaching, management, or other roles in hockey? Only time will tell. I know he has a young family. I know he still considers Boston his kind of adopted home, is what he said in the farewell address. So we'll see what happens. I don't know if he'll head back to Finland or if he'll stick around more or what will be, but I'm sure we haven't seen the last of him around league circles in some capacity. Now on to the trade talk of the day. Before we get into the potential big deal we might see between Calgary and Montreal, I do want to talk a little bit about the Carolina Hurricanes. DailyFaceoff.com and NHL Insider Frank Saravalli was mentioning today that the Carolina Hurricanes are certainly not, which was not the first time we've heard this, expected to be a big player around the deadline, trying to land a big fish. They certainly want to add a big piece here. The Canes know they have a real good team and are one of the top teams in the league and have a shot at a cup here. So I expect Don Waddell and company there to make a significant move if possible to give this team every chance it can to win a Stanley Cup. Now, Saravalli is mentioning that they would be willing to move a couple of significantly salaried roster players in order to make that happen, and they could include either Brady Shea or Niederreiter. So one of those two guys, obviously, they're both making that $5 to $6 million range. A lot of the guys they're looking at are making similar money or less. So certainly, depending on who they trade with, and they've been highly linked to John Klingberg in Dallas. That's been a big one. Maybe Dallas would be interested in Shea. That would make sense, really, if you think about it. They don't want to get into a 7-year deal with Klingberg over the kind of money he's looking for, but maybe they can get Brady Shea, who's going to have obviously less term, less money, but still a pretty mobile defenseman who can give you some offense, similar, style, although he does shoot the opposite way, but still, he'd be a good guy in Dallas as a potential cheaper replacement. Not sure if he's exactly what they have in mind, but it is an option. So that might offset the money in that regard. But are the Canes better going into the playoffs if they have Klingberg and not Shea? I'm not 100% sure on that. I mean, Klingberg probably has a little bit better offensive talent, but it's just debatable. I don't know. I mean, obviously, they've also been linked to a lot of the other big names that have been out there, but Klingberg has been the main one that we've kind of heard the most. So we will see where things go. I mean, I know on their blue line, obviously, they let Dougie Hamilton walk in the offseason. They signed Tony DeAngelo for cheap, but if he sticks around, and so far things are going well with him, he's going to need a good raise. So things are going to get complicated for how their blue line looks moving forward. No matter how you shake it, they have a strong decor there for sure, but expect a couple big names to be made available if the right big name coming back can be landed for the deadline acquisition for the Hurricanes. Now, as I mentioned here, can the Habs and the Flames pull off a blockbuster NHL trade? It certainly sounds like it is a possibility. Elliot Friedman was reporting today on the Jeff Merrick show, and not the first time I've heard this, but it's nice to hear it again with multiple other sources linked to it here. But we've heard a lot about Tyler Toffoli going to Calgary, and there being a lot of interest in that regard. Well, Friedman made note today on that program on the radio that he's heard from numerous sources that a lot of NHL executives are predicting that that's a very, very likely deal we're going to see. Now, they went on to also talk about Christian Dvorak being another member of the Habs that's likely available. Clearly, he's not playing to the level that they were expecting when they acquired him from the Coyotes. They gave up a lot to get him, but it's fair to say, at least I know it's early, but it hasn't really worked out. And the teams in Western Canada and the U.S., he said Western teams, he didn't really specify Canada or the U.S., were very interested in Dvorak. They know that he's a better player than what he's been showing, and obviously you have to take into consideration that the season has been so poorly in Montreal that's part of it too. It's not all in the individual. So there's apparently a lot of interest from the Western teams in Dvorak, and Jeff Merrick originally you kind of linked them to Calgary as well, saying there's a connection there. Of course, he played junior and was a line mate with Matthew Tkachuk. We know that they would like to add within the top 6 in Calgary. Maybe a duo of Dvorak and Toffoli could go to Calgary in a trade, and they mentioned some names possibly going out. That could include, like a Sean Monahan might have to be included. And I've seen another piece as well with a mock trade that looked really, potential here to me as well. And which guys like Dylan Dubé, Sean Monahan would have to go out in terms of making the money work. And as far as the future assets that would be interested to the Habs, would be like a prospect like Connor Zary, a young defenseman who's not getting enough opportunity like Valimaki. Of course, you could throw in a pick in there. Maybe there's another prospect, maybe like a Peltier or something like that. I'm not sure, but Montreal could possibly get 2 or 3 really good future assets along, like younger good assets along. Even Dylan Dubé is still a fairly young player too, and so is Valimaki, really. So they would have to take Monahan on for money. But the rest of those contracts and players could be a big part of the team's future. At least it's possible. So we'll see. I mean, there's no guarantees that we see that huge of a deal. The main thing is Toffoli to Calgary really seems to have legs. And Friedman seems pretty confident that that's likely going to happen. And then, like I said, when you throw in Dvorak's name now out there, and he said it sounds like there's a good likelihood that he's going to be traded too. And of course, doesn't mean he's going to Calgary, but with there being Western interest and that old connection, like Jeff Merrick brought up, it does make a lot of sense. So if those two guys went to the Flames, clearly, there's a lot there to like in a potential trade. I know the Flames are probably, they need to first make sure they're going to get in the playoffs, but they've got Johnny Gaudreau, an expiring contract who's going to be a UFA. They need to try to make this work so that he wants to stay and re-sign. You get Matthew Tkachuk, who's a pending RFA. They'd probably love to get both those guys locked up long-term in the offseason, but that's going to be challenging. They need to show them that they're going forward here, and they're going to be able to contend year after year, and adding some more talent like the players we're talking about could go a long way to doing that. It's not just about this year. It's about keeping those guys so that they don't suddenly fall off a cliff either by losing a couple of their top players. I mean, Matthew Tkachuk's restricted, so they can't lose him for nothing. But, he could walk himself to UFA status by doing another 1-year contract and then becoming UFA the year after. They could be at risk to lose Gaudreau and Tkachuk in back-to-back years if they can't get them signed. So it's risky, it's tricky. and the Flames have some hard work to do. The other thing, too, about Tyler Toffoli to Calgary that kind of connects it all together is that, of course, he was in LA for a long time, won a Stanley Cup in LA with head coach Daryl Sutter. We know Daryl Sutter likes his guys, and obviously he played a big role for him in LA, so I'm sure that he would be fond of getting him on the team in Calgary as well, and that's part of the other reason why a lot of people are convinced that that's a very, very likely going to happen. But could the deal get bigger if they also have interest in Dvorak? They have lots of young pieces that could interest Montreal. Let me know what you think down below in the comments, and we'll discuss further. Give me your mock trades if you think this deal could be smaller, bigger, or what we have in place here. What do you see happening? Give me your mock trades. Let's talk about it in the comments. We will discuss it down there. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.